Hey, GLP1 Plus SideZ community. Before we jump into the podcast, please take the time to leave us a 5-star review on whatever audio platform you're listening to the podcast on. Share your story and how the podcast has helped you. This will help us get referred up in the audio platform so that we can reach more people that need our help, our support, and guidance from our doctors. Help us get loud and change things. Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus SideZ Podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus SideZ Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault. Today's episode is brought to you by Ro, a telehealth platform that's changing the game of GLP-1 access. What sets Ro apart? Ro understands the challenges of navigating insurance hurdles and the skyrocketing prices of GLP-1 medications. That's why they specialize in getting insurance approvals for GLP-1s. And if insurance is a barrier, they go a step further by prescribing brand name zepbound vials for prices close to those of compound GLP-1s. With Ro, you're not just getting a prescription, you're getting a partner in your journey that's helping you access affordable treatment and guiding you every step of the way. Whether it's insurance approvals or cost-effective alternatives, Ro is here to make sure that you get the medication you need. Visit ro.co/plus-sides with a Z today to see how they can help you take control of your weight management journey with affordable, accessible care. That's ro.co/plus-sides with a Z, making healthcare work for you. Check out the link in our show notes for more details. Welcome to the Plus SideZ Podcast. How you doing?
Welcome.
Welcome.
How have you been?
Hey, good. It's been a super busy day, like nonstop for me.
I agree.
But yeah. Good. You know what I'm saying?
It's the time of day to come alive.
Yes. When we talk about favorite subject. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Although I also like to talk about chocolate. So it's a second favorite subject.
Yep. And coffee.
Yeah.
And coffee.
Coffee. Speaking of, I do have some coffee here, and it's the sugar kind.
Okay.
Listen, I need steam today, okay?
You have to.
Yeah.
You've been a busy bee.
I'm a very busy bee. I have all the jobs in the land.
There we go.
Okay. Yes, so what we'll do is we'll do our intros. So for our regulars, this is your cue to fast forward. And we're going to roundtable intros. So my name is Kim Carlos. This is the Plus SideZ Podcast. We are an multi-award winning podcast. And we focus on educating around obesity and really any kind of metabolic disease, and focus on what it's like to live life with a chronic disease, and not in the way that you would think, where it's like we dissect it to pieces. It's more like understanding it so that we can be the healthiest us we can be, right? And that's what we do here, because ultimately it is a chronic disease and there is no cure, and we're going to need each other. So we like to focus on community. I have had obesity since I was a child. I have never been able to control the size of my body, but I have tried every year and every diet that there possibly is. I have been on a GLP-1 for 2.5 years. I've lost 110 pounds. I gained back 10 pounds when I started perimenopause, and then I lost 4. And it's just back and forth because that's just the way this works. And there's a lot about regain that's part of this, a lot about stuff that's with maintenance. And there's just so many things to talk about, guys. There's so many things. It's such a complicated condition. So luckily, we have experts that join us every week to help us learn more so that we can advocate for our health and for what it is that we need and build community and also forgive ourselves because there's a lot that comes with that on this journey and understanding what it is. So that's who I am. That's who we are. Let's talk to our cat, and then we'll talk to our special co-host.
I'm your cat.
Yes, you're my cat. Yes.
I'm your cat. Woo! I'm Kat. I'm Kat Carter. Kat Carter 7 on TikTok. Oh, and you can catch me on the YouTubes. Kat Carter TPS, the plus sides on the YouTube.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's
we're
got a YouTube.
evolving. We're evolving.
Was Kat Carter 7 taken on TikTok on YouTube?
No.
You're like, maybe I didn't check.
I wanted it to do with the plus sides.
Okay, that's cool.
You know what? True, but consistency. We need consistency.
I don't know. I mean, what do I know? Well, tell us about you, Kat.
I am. I like to sweat. Actually, okay. So I'm on the Mounjaros. I have gone through Kim's journey of gaining weight during perimenopause. I am in perimenopause, and I went on HRT, and I did put on about between 8 and 12 pounds last year. Actually, the scale didn't really move from 2023 until about last month.
Wow.
It moved up for that entire time. But unbeknownst to me, you get your hormones in check, get everything in line. Everything, it takes time. It takes time.
It
Patience. But perimenopause is real fun, you know. But the key is what my doctor has told me. I just gotta stay active, which is fine with me. I do like to sweat. I've been that's why I love to sweat. I have always been active, even at 320 pounds. When I did tip the scales down to, I think I might be at about 80 pounds lost with Mounjaro because it's finally moving. But in any case, no amount of activity, sweat, boot camp classes, amount of stupid, silly diets is going to chase away insulin resistance. So that's why we're here.
It helps. It helps, but it is what it is, and genetics is a thing. And I think, and we just have to just understand it. And I think it was really cool having Dr. Karate on and telling us there's just different forms of obesity and different kinds. And,
amazing.
We do what we can with what we've got right when we've got it. And so I think Kat and I both talk about maintenance a lot on this because we did just sort of get to a place where we didn't really gain or lose much for not much more than 3 to 5 pounds or so for over a year. And so we were kind of we guess we're in maintenance in a big body. So we talk about that because we're both a size 14 and tall and just bigger humans in general. And what's that like? Because I think everybody expects to be skinny at the end of this, but that's just not what the data shows for most people. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just skinny plus, and I'm
skinny plus, baby. I like it.
I like
who was that stranger I see there?
I know, our friend.
Hey, Priscilla /PMAC. Our community guest host tonight. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me. So just a brief description. I've been on Semaglutide since July of 2023. Yeah. Off and on. I'm one of those people that have to wade the financial affordability of the medication. So it is what it is. Yeah. I think I'm in the same boat. I'm right around to 14. And Kat, I have started to do the butt stuff now too.
We should
exercise.
What the butt stuff is. Yeah.
The resistance band.
Your butt hashtag. Your glute stuff.
Butt stuff with Kat, right? Yes. Yes. Butt stuff are resistance trainings and stuff. So Kat makes really good videos on our channel, our YouTube channel, and sometimes we exercise together. And that's what we were just talking about. We had the LA Times reach out to us and ask if they could use our video. And I'm like, oh, my chin looks so bad at the angle on our exercise video. But whatever. It's who I am. It's my baby.
I have an Elvis haircut in that video. I look like,
Well, it's about to be in the LA Times, so
we're gonna
here
wear
we
the
go.
voice. So yeah, I look like Elvis in a t-shirt, and
Yeah. Well, also we have our other co-host, which is Asia over in the corner on your couch if you're watching on YouTube.
Yes, there.
Yes, there. That is the cat.
She will do
cat tonight.
She will go back and forth. She'll end up on the table.
Sure.
It's never ending story.
I mean, we're an animal friendly podcast, so it's all good. So tonight
we call her the team mascot.
Yes, that's right. I like it. TPS mascot. We used to have the AT alien because we're in Atlanta.
He's downstairs in my office, though.
We need. Yeah, I feel like
my office echoes. So we're
this is
husband's studio.
Yeah, can't do that anymore. If you go back and listen to our audio when we first started 2 years ago, it's like
hello.
Yeah. Well, tonight we're going to talk about what I'm telling you guys. I've been wanting to have this conversation since I started a GLP-1. I want to talk about GLP-1 in the brain and what the heck is going on, because so many things, it really does affect the brain. We have learned one of the most, I think, the biggest lessons I got when Dr. Rosen came on our show, who's a bariatric surgeon, obesity specialist. Kat said to him, so it all comes down to hormones. And he said, no, it all comes down to the brain. And we all know we don't know enough about the brain. We don't, so I just think I've been wanting to ask these questions for a long time. So we do have a doctor on that's going to discuss that with us, and we would like to welcome him in now. Okay. Hello. How are you?
Hi there, folks. Thank you for having me.
Plus SideZ. We're so glad to have you.
It's totally a pleasure.
I know that was quite a big intro, but that's usually what we do because we get new people all the time because we're excited. Yeah. And but every time, we get a new episode, we get new people, and then they go back and watch season 1 all the way to season 4. So, we got to do it. We got to do the round table, but we're so glad to have you. But now it's your turn. So could you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you help people?
Dr. Mazoon here. So I'm a neurologist. I'm a neurologist by trade. I've been in practice for a very long time, for more than 15 years. After 15 years of practice, I switched my practice to telemedicine, and I started a company in telemedicine and telehealth. And to give you a little bit of background, what that means, I sort of started my practice as a practice basically in stroke neurology. So go to the hospital, see patients who are having stroke, and all the risk factors for heart disease and stroke and all that are all the same risk factors, right? It's all the same things that we hear about. Yeah. So I had the advantage or the disadvantage of seeing people at the critical time of need, right? When they're having stroke, and these are the outcomes of basically our lifestyle and what we, how we live our life, and cigarette smoking and obesity and hypercholesterolemia and hypertension, all of that, right? Yeah. So I switched my career to telemedicine about 11 years ago. I started a company called Telespecialists. We've seen about 1.5 million patients so far. And we continue to see about 30,000 patients a month at the critical time of need, right in the hospital. So it's telemedicine. So there's robots work that we log into. So I have about 200 plus physicians across the United States. There's a patient that comes to the hospital that has a acute neurologic illness like stroke. They bring the card right to the patient, the telemedicine card. We log on and we treat the patient with the nurses and the physicians right there, so that we can be there instantly, as opposed to having to call a physician in to come in and time his brain and all of that. So that's the bulk of practice. And all of these times, whenever we see a patient who's having a stroke, our treatment goals are to put out the fires, right? Or to put out the fires, give the medicine called the TPA, which is a blood pressure medication, as quickly as possible so brain doesn't die. And whatever happens in that hour, it dictates what that patient's going to do for the rest of their life, how they're going to live. Mm-hmm. And every single time we did this, it's satisfying to see patients improve, but then you wonder, how can we change our healthcare? How can we change the paradigm of our healthcare to a wellness model to prevent that from happening? We're so used to putting out fires.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's where, we started to explore the direct-to-consumer model with weight management and wellness. And we did a lot of work with that. And the GLP-1s are at the top of the game there. So we started to get exposure to GLP-1, the whole science of GLP-1. This is a science that we're just scratching the surface, guys. We don't even know the true benefits. We're just starting to understand the benefits. And I'll talk about the neurological benefits in a minute, but the GLP-1s it's not really very new. It's been in the market since the 80s. I don't know if people realize that.
Oh, we talk about it a lot.
We talk about it
Yeah. Yeah. I know, like we do. We talk about a lot about how these are not anywhere new as people think that they are. I mean, the double agonist is new. That's newish, right? But even that's got lots of data,
Yeah, and the data that's coming out is very, very interesting. So I think what happened was because it sort of exploded after it got the popularity, with the TV, with the Kardashians, et cetera, right? It started to explode. And then all of a sudden, FDA realized there's a shortage. And so all of a sudden, the market just got bigger because it came out of the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And a lot of people went on it. And because of that, we started to realize the other benefits.
Yeah.
So we talk about the food cravings, how it reduces the alcohol noise. I mean, who knew about that?
Right.
It's a ton of things. And because it became such a big science, people start to study it with other things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like fascinating. Like I do remember when Matthew Perry passed, and it was before they kind of knew what he passed of. And I made a video and I was like, I was thinking the same way that you are. I was like, what if, right? Like, what if we could get ahead of this, And people were pissed off about it. I'm like, it's an important conversation. And like, like I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying like, this is when we talk about this. This is when we try to find a way to be able to head this off at the pass, right? Like, I mean, I'll be honest. So because my sister has obesity, my mom has obesity, my dad has obesity, like it runs in my family. And, I have a child and he is very, very tall, very lean, never have any problems. But I'm very encouraged by these medications because if it is something that he develops, then I know he'll never have to suffer. You know what I mean? And I think that's an important thing to remember when people say like, oh, these new things. Well, I feel like if these new things were solving any other disease, right? Like any other disease, nobody would say anything, right? But because it's weight, there seems to be a lot of, oh, these new drugs we have no data on. You know what I mean? If it was any other disease, I feel like that people will be thrilled. It's a groundbreaking drug, so exciting. But, we've been talking about this for 2.5 years. And in the beginning, I would say that like, we were sort of the TikTok side of TikTok that like everybody was following, but like nobody wanted to admit they were following.
Lurking.
Right. And then when then it was like 2.5 years later, all of a sudden talking about compound on the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? With big jiggly bellies and like saying the quiet part out loud. And so we've come a long way in a short amount of time. And I think that's probably because of social media and, and TikTok and, and the shortage, like you were mentioning. I think that shortage has been a little bit of a blessing and a curse maybe, right? And like it opened up access and we saw it treated like, I think, like you said, sort of, I don't know, anecdotally is probably not the right word scientifically. I don't know, but we saw it, treating a lot of other things, which is fascinating. Yeah. I wanted to tell you, like, when I first experienced no food noise, I thought I was having a stroke because nobody was talking about these medicines, and I was like, here I am, another diet pill, and another this, that, and then I was like, oh my God, I can hear myself talk. And then I was like, oh, I guess it's not a stroke. You know what I mean? And then after that, I had to know everything about it, which is why we made this podcast, because I was like, I need to know everything that we know now. And then as we're learning, I need to know all those too. And I knew other people needed to know too, because so many people struggle with this. And I don't want to have a stroke for real. So I think it's important that we talk about all of this and how these can help. Hopefully us either never get there or, I mean, maybe even like how we recover from it if we do. Yeah. So let's get started. Go ahead, Kat.
Yeah. I did want to make a note here too. I know we're going to mention it throughout the interview, but next month, we're coming up on May, and May is Stroke Prevention Month. So I think it's a
Mm.
really good time to talk about all this. So,
Yep.
okay. So we discuss food noise a lot on the show, our food obsession, food noise as it pertains to obesity. Could you explain for our audience how this starts or how it's maybe created neurologically? Can diet over time kind of train your brain into craving and in hunger cues? And please feel free to explain each part of the brain and how it all connects, because
Yeah.
I'm still ready to nerd, that creates that reward system that food gives us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question that's very important. When the GLP-1s came out and when we started to experience this, it like you said, you go up on the units, you go on the dosing, and then it's almost like it's very sudden. Like all of a sudden, at a certain dose, you're like, whoa, something just happened. I don't really crave this anymore. And I have my glass of wine, but I just don't feel like drinking it anymore. And it's really very sudden. And there, we all thought at the beginning that it's just the GLP-1 receptors in the gut, in the stomach, right?
Yeah.
It lazies the stomach, and so you don't feel like eating. But the more experience we got with it, it actually works at receptors in the brain. So there's reward centers in the brain that actually respond to GLP-1 agonists. So the theory of food craving is very much like craving and addiction to really anything else. It's your pathways in dopamine in the brain, right?
Yeah.
So experience that's pleasurable, right? Experience that's pleasurable becomes a positive feedback and reinforces those pathways. And there's actually neural growth and strengthening of the pathways when we're exposed to that pleasurable experience. But then what happens is the dopamine receptors become saturated with a certain level of exposure. So you need more exposure to get more of these receptors activated, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So now that's the addiction, right? So now you need more and more, but you still have those very strong sort of highways and pipelines of pathways of neurons in the dopaminergic system in the brain. That's really the mechanism for any kind of addiction. That's why we see with the GLP-1s are so powerful in reducing that. They actually work in reward centers in the brain, the cortex, the very front part of the cortex, prefrontal, if you will, as well as what we call the mesolimbic system, which is motivation and reward and reinforcement of that. So long and behold, we're seeing now that not only it reduces the food cravings, it also reduces the cravings for smoking and for alcohol. And why is that? Because it works on the pathways. So nobody really knew that before when we first started to get into this science. We just thought it was the stomach. But no, it actually does affect the brain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. I think that's is kind of still the narrative like that is popping around on social. And I think the news is getting a little better. I think it's getting a little better in that they're starting to be like, oh, it does affect the brain. But for the longest time, just like you said, they were like, oh, it just makes you eat less. It forces you into a calorie deficit. And that's why you lose weight. And then you lose weight and you feel good about yourself. So you don't want to eat bad food, and just kind of like very diet culture kind of way of thinking. It's not that,
Well, and I think the main thing is too, to think about it, is Kim and I both come from the world of bariatric surgery before we started a GLP-1. And when we were going through bariatric surgery and leading up to it, it was all about, oh, the ghrelin in your stomach will send the notification to your brain that you're full. And I think what both she and I have learned through going through the process of bariatric surgery is that all it really does is clog up that pipe to where you can't put food in there anymore.
Yeah,
for us.
that for the lap band. Yeah. It's different for people that do like sleeve and gastric bypass because that like changes the physiology. But yeah, for us, it was just like a behavior modification thing, and it did not work.
Right. And that's why when we hit that food noise and it went away on the GLP-1, we were like, okay, now the surgery with the neurological, now that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. It did for sure. I think it
Yeah.
helped a lot. The combination of the lap band plus the GLP-1 for me, it was very helpful.
Yeah.
And when
If, mhm.
sorry, go
I want to
ahead.
hear you, doctor. Tell me.
And when you look at the behaviors, like you have the binge eating, right? So you put the popcorn or chocolate or something in front of you, it just becomes mindless eating, right? You're not even paying attention, you're just watching television, and this is a positive reinforcement, right? It just keeps going in a reverberant loop. Very similar to chain smokers, right? Very
Yeah.
similar to alcohol use. I mean, it's the behaviors are the same. The substance is very different, but the behavior is the same. As a matter of fact, what they actually saw is that the fatty food, and this is the biggest joke of all, it's the fatty food. I don't know why couldn't it be addiction to good food, but the fatty food and the simple sugars are the ones that are most addictive. And I think it may have to do somehow with how quickly they're absorbed.
Mhm.
Simple sugars start to get absorbed right in the mouth, the amylase in the mouth, right? The digestion happens very quickly. It may have to do with that. But the simple sugars and the fatty food are actually very strong stimulants of this pathway. So the behaviors is the same.
Yeah. Interesting. I will say this, like, I feel like something, and I'm still shocked by it, but I would rather have like a steak and Brussels sprouts or like salmon and Brussels sprouts over pretty much anything at this point, which I find utterly bizarre. Because I really would like that when it comes to it. So the cravings in general, I still have cravings. I didn't for like the first couple of years. It really didn't change until I guess, I don't know, the past 8 months or so. And now I do have cravings and I am hungry and I do eat and I have a little bit of food noise. And there's kind of a difference, I think, between food noise and hunger. And I'm on the highest dose of the medicine. But what I want also changed, I guess is my point, is like what I wanted to eat. And I don't think that's because I just became this crazy healthy person. Like something changed to where my body, I could hear my body crave what it needed or something. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but maybe you have a theory.
I still make cake and have like it, so it's not good. Oh, and also wanted to say, like, I remember when Dr. Rosen said, biologically, our bodies want to survive the famine. So
Yeah.
maybe because fat and sugar is so caloric, maybe it's just been since we were hunter-gatherers, right?
Yeah.
That's
I
exactly
mean,
right. And that doesn't change. Now we're no longer hunter-gatherers, but we still have the
Right.
same cravings.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
So,
We're not putting on bone marrow to survive anymore, right?
Yeah.
right. So we've talked with so many doctors in the past about how GLP-1 therapies, affect us and allow us to eat what we want to eat, but also we're battling the hormonal changes that we are going through as women. And with that comes a lot of metabolic changes. So in your role in the neurology world, are we seeing that these therapies can help prevent neurological conditions going forward for folks?
Yeah, there is actually, again, this is a new science. So there was started to be some thought process, can it actually help prevent or reduce the incidence of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and that. So what was interesting, and this is relatively new, but a couple of years ago, there were some studies that came out on that. And last year, there was a big UK study that came out on, I believe it was semaglutide and liraglutide, which is the other one that's a little older. Small study that actually showed that the decline of cognition and thinking and memory loss and that did get reduced by 18%, which was a high enough number. The study was very small, 204 folks, but that triggered a very large study that's going on right now. It's called the EVOKE study, and the results, the initial data is going to come out sometime at the end of the year, I think. But they are being looked at right now. So nothing is conclusive, but there clearly is some indication that it will help. There's also a couple of small studies that looked at Parkinson's and showed that there is some modest improvement with the motor symptoms of Parkinson's and this and that. So there really is, again, this is a relatively new science for neurologists, It's new science for our world, but there are some implications that neurologically there's some benefit. Yes.
Fascinating. I can't help but wonder, like, every time I hear this about all the new sort of things that it helps with, and keep in mind, I'm not a blame the food person, like blame the food in our country kind of thing. But I can't help but be like, dang, is our food causing all this shit? like, you know
Makes
what
you
I
think.
mean? Like, seriously, like the
Well, it could
processed
be a little
food
bit of
and
both.
stuff, like, I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of everything, right? But like,
Yeah.
so many different conditions. And I know a lot of people have talked about sort of like the inflammation from like how these help with inflammation, and that is a big reason that they have an effect on the brain. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways that people can get a decline in memory and cognition with
Mhm.
time, right?
Mhm.
So one is just the shrinkage or atrophy of the brain, and there's different fashions. There's Alzheimer's disease, there's frontotemporal dementia, like Bruce Willis has, and there's Lewy body disease, and so on and so forth. And then there is the microvascular disease, what we call, we say vascular dementia, which is the tiny little blood vessels in the deep part of the brain that harden as we age and with risk factors. So this is where, your reduction of risk factors and all of that for cardiovascular disease really become very helpful in preventing and reducing the incidence of dementia, or just cognitive decline. Now, the good news is that yes, you improve your cardiovascular health, you improve your risk factors, you reduce your risk factors with the GLP-1s. You can deduce from that alone that you're going to have a better outcome as you grow older, and so on and so forth. There are new medications, just to as a side conversation. There are new medications that are now in the market as FDA approved for Alzheimer's that are very exciting. Never had this before.
Really?
But if you do get early Alzheimer's, there are new treatments that are now FDA approved for that. So we'll see how those all roll out.
Oh, fascinating. So what's considered early Alzheimer's in terms of age?
Yeah, it can happen at any age. It can happen. I mean, I've seen ton of patients with early Alzheimer's, so what we call mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. That is when people have just a little bit of impairment, and they're sort of at risk for Alzheimer's. But those are because it evolves very, very, very slowly, right? So you see people that have a little bit of short-term memory loss, just have a hard time remembering. They remember the remote illness very, very well, but a little bit of short-term memory loss, ask the same questions and that sort of thing. And that starts to very slowly evolve, right? So you want to catch patients right at that moment, because a lot of people think, well, you're just old, it can be 50, it can be 90s. It can happen at any age, really, beyond the age of 50. 40s are very young. 50s are still young. 60s and above, you do see more and more incidents of that.
Interesting.
But again, again, it's very easy to say, oh, just old age, they're asking the same question. Just ask me that question and that. It's very important to go to your physician as quickly as possible and get evaluated. If you have early symptoms, you might actually be a candidate for this sort of thing. And the insurance does pay for it.
That's fascinating. I did not know that. I'm not sure people talk about it enough. I think that people definitely make the assumption that Alzheimer's is a thing you get when you're old, right? And you get it because you're old, and as opposed to thinking about it that way. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us.
I mean, you look at Bruce Willis, right? He's not very old, but he's
What is he in? He's in his 60s, right?
right, which is not very old.
Oh,
I mean, I'm in my 50s. I'm hoping the 60s is not old,
Right.
I remember when I was little and I thought 30 was old, and now I'm in perimenopause.
40.
Okay. It is absolutely, it's a-okay. I tell my niece all the time, your 40s are fun. Anyway.
Sure. When you hit perimenopause.
The one thing I wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
when we're talking earlier about the GLP-1s, not to change the subject a whole lot, but I think as we all know, I think it's important to emphasize that diet and exercise are extremely important for this. The GLP-1s is the very first time in the human history that it's really not a yo-yo drug. It's not fen-phen and all these things. It actually works, right? but it's kind of like your best friend and your conscience in your mind, right? It's telling you you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, eat less and this and that. You got to listen to it, but you also have to modify the diet. So and I've treated now in our new venture with the GLP1s. I've treated a lot of patients now with this. And the experience that I have is some patients do have that good food noise and say, now you got to eat healthy and that. But some patients don't, and they eat less, right? It's great. You eat less. But the proportion of what you eat is very important, right? So you still need your essential fatty acids. You still need the lean proteins. You still need the good food, the non-starchy carbs. You still need all of that. But if your diet is focused on the trans fat, you're going to still have your risk factors on the trans fat, with simple sugars and all of that. To reduce your diet because you're eating less, it's kind of like taking that plate and just making it smaller, but now you're smaller of bad things.
Yeah.
And now you really will miss your essential fatty acids. You really miss your good proteins. You really miss this good stuff that you have to have. So that's really important. A lot of like vitamin D, which is one of the 4 vitamins that is lipid soluble, meaning it's a fatty kind of a vitamin. You start to miss that. So people, they're not careful, they're not taking the multivitamins and vitamin D and calcium, you're going to get issues with bone and osteoporosis at a very early age and so on and so forth. It's very important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I will tell you sort of like my journey with food on this has been, it's exactly what I did in the beginning. I just ate less. And I think in the beginning that's okay. And that it's a lot, right? Because it does empower you to change your life, right? If it works, which it does for most people, right? And I remember I just sort of focused on, I'm just gonna eat less to start, and I still ate all kind of the same sort of things. And then I remember being like, what if I moved a little bit more, right? And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to start small because I had injured my back and I was 350 pounds, right? So I just was like, I'm going to keep up with my dishes and I'm going to keep up with my laundry. And that's just what I did every day. Sorry, it always does that whenever I talk with my hands. And I was like, that's what I'll focus on. And that's what I'm going to do. And then I was like, what if I ate with intention? Like, this is what my brain was able to do, right? What if I moved my body with intention? And I don't know how to describe it. I literally was just so plagued with food noise and it had just gotten so loud. I really didn't have the ability to sort of like, I wish I could deconstruct. Does that make sense? Like everything moved way too fast for me to be like, what if right? Like I really didn't have that ability, or I would do it for a few months and then the scale would move only so far. And then I would get discouraged because no more would come off. And I would quit and I'd be like, fine, I guess I'll just eat whatever I want. Like that's sort of what happened, like over years and years and years of the eat less, move more. And then when I started to do it that way, and it put me in a place to create what I think a lot of people refer to as lifestyle changes. And I don't even know if I want to call it that. Ultimately, I mean, it is a different lifestyle. It really is. Like, I don't like calling it that because I do think it's very like associated with diet culture. And I really want to get away from that. But it is a new lifestyle. Like that does not mean that I don't eat pizza. I will eat a meatball sandwich if I want a meatball sandwich. It's just, I have that every now and then. And most of the time I eat good stuff, and I think that's sort of the difference, right? Is that, but I had to get there. Like, I think in the beginning, it was really difficult to make the shift to, I want steak and Brussels sprouts, right? Like but now that's what I'd like to have in salmon and, and those kinds of things. And vegetables and spinach. And it's utterly bizarre to me still to this day, but I had to get there. So I lost the weight, but then over time, I just didn't want any of that anymore. It doesn't even taste good. Like it really doesn't. And even if I like go and I'm like, oh yeah, I want this, and that. Like I remember the first time, I'm clearly very fascinated by how this affects the brain. I remember the first time I was going to have a mom day and I left to go to get my hair done, like go get my hair done. I was going to get a boba. Like I was all excited. Right. And so I'm leaving and I've been on a GLP-1, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so. And I went, oh, you know what to do? I'm going to go and get a hot dog because I love hot dogs. I don't care what anybody says. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to get a boba and all these things. And then my brain went, I don't think we want that. And I was like, what do you mean we don't want that? That's our favorite thing. And like, literally, that's like what the conversation was like. And I was like, I don't think so. And I made this connection. I wanted the way that made me feel. I did not want that food. And it blew my mind that I could, again, like dissect that way, right? Like I wanted the way I was thinking about the memory of what it felt like to eat the food, not what the food actually tasted like. And I was able to sort of dissect about what I wanted and what I needed or what I really wanted. And then I was like, no, and I didn't get any of that. I went and I don't even know. I think I just had like a regular meal somewhere. Like I didn't feel like I needed to go and
So they had
do
the tea.
all of these things anymore. Kind of going back to that sort of addictive behavior. I didn't, it blew my mind. Like it's literally that moment and things changing for me, like with being able to do that. That was when I was like, and I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say there's no excuses anymore because I don't think that's, again, I don't like to put too much fault and blame on these kinds of things. I just think that it is such an amazing tool to be the healthiest you that you can be. You know what I mean? And the food and the movement all play a big role in it. I wish in the beginning that I had done more movement than I did, or moved with more intent, or thought more about strength training and all those different things. But that's all stuff I learned, honestly, because of the podcast, because we had people on the show to teach us about it, because at the time, nobody was talking about it, right? Nobody was talking about it.
Right.
So it's just been like the coolest thing ever. So I can only imagine what it is to like be a doctor and understand the brain. But I mean, like, what when you've seen people that have been treated with this, have they described things that are similar to that? Like being able to make these choices and literally want something different. Like I would lie all the time and be like, oh, I really want this delicious salad. No, it's full of shit. That was not true. I did not want that. I did not. I wanted Twinkies, right? I wanted Swiss cake rolls. I wanted the most caloric, sugary, fried things possible. And now I don't want any of that stuff. And if I do have a cake, I have a few bites of it. You know what I mean? Have you like talked to patients who have experienced that too?
It's not uncommon. A lot of people do experience what you just experienced.
Yeah.
There are people, on the other hand, who eat less, but then they binge eat a bag of chips or 2 bags of chips because they're hungry, and then they get full. All of a sudden, they're nauseous, and then they have problems, right? So I think we have to be aware of our body, and it does lend itself to changing those habits. In other words, we all know if you eat large meals, it's not very healthy. You eat multiple small good meals, it's healthier. And with the GLP-1 diet, it lends itself to that. So you have less nausea, less constipation, less issues with GI tract if you just kind of do what's appropriate, what's healthy, which is you drink a lot of water, you eat good fiber, so it can help with the constipation, but also it's just good for you. The fiber doesn't get absorbed, right? It's a carbohydrate that doesn't get absorbed, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the starches that you can denature. I don't know if you guys know, but you can make a good starch like a pasta or whatever. That's a good starch that you like to eat, right? You make it and it's hot and all nice, right? And then you put it in the fridge overnight. You let it cool. And what you do with that is you denature the starch. So then when you eat it, you reheat it again and you eat it the next day. And what you've just done is you've kind of changed all the carbohydrates into a carbohydrates that's denatured, so it's not starch that you can actually get into calories. It kind of becomes like a fiber. So there's all these little tricks that you learn when you kind of go through this journey, and you become healthier. You eat more fiber, you drink more water, you have smaller frequent meals, and it just lends itself to a healthier lifestyle. Teaches you how to do it if you just pay attention. You got to pay attention to your body and what your body needs, and it's all good.
Want the fastest working GLP-1? For half the price, Ro now offers FDA-approved weight loss injections cheaper, with results you can see faster. Lose 15% of your weight with the formula from Eli Lilly that hits not 1, but 2 hormones to curb hunger and nausea. Weight loss faster, confidence higher, price cheaper. See if you qualify at ro.co/TV.
We have people ask us all the time, like about nausea and vomiting, all these different things. And in the beginning in the community, we were just like, I don't know, like take a Zofran, this. Do you know what I find helps with nausea 98% of the time? Eating and drinking. Like that, And I like, it's weird. It's like, I tell people all the time, it's almost like a new, like thirst or hunger signal because you don't get like grumbly tumblies anymore. And I'm telling you, once I figured that out, I was like, oh, I don't get nauseous anymore. Like, it's not even a thing. I'm like, oh, I just need to eat it. Like, I immediately make the association. Like, I don't even go, I feel nauseous, I should eat or drink. I just think it's the same cue for me, which is like crazy. You know?
That
It's
happens.
amazing how that
You get really busy.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, Kat, go ahead. I knew you wanted to have the stroke question.
Okay. Well, I mentioned at the beginning of our episode, stroke prevention. It has affected a lot of my mother's side of the family, losing family members to stroke. So it's a big thing. I just wanted to say. So May is Stroke Prevention Month. So we've learned a lot that obesity or being overweight can increase our risks. What are other neurological risks due to obesity? And could issues such as PCOS or diabetes also increase those risks?
Yeah. So diabetes and PCOS is what we call a comorbid. Like it's a risk factor for obesity, which in turn, it in turn it causes other things. So cholesterol goes up, triglycerides go up.
Yep.
All of these things are risk factors for stroke.
Mhm.
So that these are all linked. It's all, in this whole bag, it's all linked. And when you talk about prevention of stroke, it's very interesting. There's different ways that people can get stroke.
Yeah.
And it's, when you think about it, like the major part of the brain is called middle cerebral artery, the artery that goes to the major part of the brain that's responsible for major functions of your brain. It's like 2 millimeters in diameter, if you think about it. It's really crazy. So to have a cholesterol plaque that builds in there, that builds up and disrupts and makes a blood clot and gives you a major stroke and disability, when you think about it, was 2 millimeters. It's pretty scary, right?
Yeah.
People don't realize that. Brain is very delicate. Arteries are very small. The same thing with your coronary arteries in your heart. They're very small arteries.
Yeah.
They carry really important functions. So when you look at a picture of a cholesterol plaque, you're talking about a tiny, tiny artery here. So going back to this, what are these risk factors that start this cascade of disease? Well, it's everything that you know about, smoking and hypercholesterolemia and obesity. These are all comorbid functions. So can we reduce the incidence of stroke? Yeah, those big strokes, but also the micro strokes, the strokes that are silent, the strokes that you don't know about. And you start to accumulate these tiny spots in the brain. It's called white spots in the brain, microvascular disease of the brain, that starts to give you dementia and it's called vascular dementia, that start to give you other issues like that, and cognition kind of slows down and so on and so forth. So it really is linked to what we do to our bodies.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there anything that besides like what we do to our bodies, but just to keep our cognitive health and shape, right? The things we hear about like crossword puzzles, game shows, learning a new dance, is that also a good part of keeping our brains healthy too?
So, there's a lot of thought, and this is the sort of thing that we admit is very difficult to study in a controlled study. Say, okay, now this is a big recommendation, right? But what are some thoughts and challenges? So one thing we always, everybody thinks that crossword puzzles, whatever, can help, and true. But I think there's some thought process now that complex skills can actually be a little bit better, like table tennis or chess. Chess, you have to think. And there's a neural pathways that start in, so it's called neuroplasticity. So there's new nerves and that start to develop, right? So what is also some other things that may be a novelty or a challenge, like maybe learn how to dance, learn how to do this in new language or something like that. It provokes neuroplasticity. So this is something like what we say, train your brain like it's a muscle. Well, you're training it like it's a muscle, like you're going to the gym and lifting weights like it's a muscle. So that's one thing that has been interesting to come out. The other thing, there's been some indication that, hey, can we, if we prioritize this circadian rhythm synchronization, what does that mean? You're exposed to light during the day, you're not exposed to light at night. So avoid bright lights 2 hours before you sleep. And then in the morning, light exposure first thing in the morning. maybe simple, maybe, I mean, a lot of people can listen to this and say, oh, it's hokey pokey, but there is some data that suggests that the circadian rhythm that gets established in the hypothalamus part of the brain, which establishes your homeostasis and everything else, is actually a very good positive feedback for parts of the brain like that then goes to the cortical part of the brain. So some of the other stuff that's kind of out there, again, we're talking about things, I mean, we all know good diet and good exercise and healthy living, having a good psychology and having a good relationship with a loved one, all that. These are all ways to live healthy and live a good life. But some surprising things that come up from time to time, you wonder about that this is a new thing.
Yeah.
And one of the new trends that also support your mitochondria and that. So, cold exposure, cold showers, cryotherapy, coenzyme Q10, all these things. It's very difficult to know if these things are just a fad or something or a trait.
I don't know. I'm all about the fad stuff. It's fun.
Yeah.
I'm like, freeze me, baby. No, but I mean, like, it's fun. Like, because like, I think there's a lot of stuff that we learn by circumstances like that. We're like, let's see if we can freeze it. Like, oh, look, it helps the brain.
But I was gonna say, I think at this point, my argument with my fiance, because he does a sitz bath in super hot water, and then he'll do a shower and in the shower in cold water, and I'm always like, you take way too dang long, and now I'm like, dang it, I can't say that anymore. For his brain,
because maybe the cold is good. I don't know.
I know. No, that's really, I mean, it's just so fascinating, all the ways that the brain works and what it does and how one little thing affects another. But no, everything is like super fascinating. So a large portion of our audience is female, and they're going through menopause, perimenopause, and everything that is involved in that. So can you discuss or tell us about what happens in the brain and the nervous system as it happens? And are there activities outside of what you've already mentioned that we can do to help support ourselves?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Menopause and perimenopausal states, is a really very big change in women's lives. It's really a sort of it's a huge pivot, and it's not just not just the hormones per se. So we look at estrogen, and estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone anymore, right? It's a modulator of neurotransmitters in the brain. And we have to understand it as that. It actually affects the neurotransmitters in the brain. So when you think about what people go through with menopause, well, there's changes in mood, motivation, reward. There's memory and cognition. There is calmness and excitability. There's all these things that happen. Why does it happen? Because as the levels of estrogen drops, it also disrupts other hormones. For instance, serotonin and dopamine. That's why you have the changes in mood and motivation and reward. Mm-hmm. So we always think, okay, estrogen is just reproductive organ, but it's really the effects of it is throughout the body, and the effects of it in the brain is actually pretty interesting. So the other one is memory and cognition. We all feel like we have more fatigue, and we have concentration and focus. That's because it also affects the acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is very important for your cognition, and it's very important for acuity of your short-term memory and attention, right? Yeah. So that's why when, alternatively people smoke, that affects your acetylcholine receptors, people become hyperacute and alert. So that's that. And the other one is the excitatory and the inhibitory ones, like the GABA and the glutamate, which also, will change the mood changes and the calmness and the excitability and all that. So that's why people have mood swings and disruptions of sleep and that. There's also really good evidence that shows that as the estrogen drop, what also get disrupted and dysregulated is the hypothalamus. And we talked about earlier how the hypothalamus kind of governs your body temperature, appetite, sleep, pretty much everything, signaling of the hormones. So when you have the hot flashes and the night sweats and the sleep disturbance, all that, is because it essentially affects the hypothalamus in the brain. And that's what that happens. And then there's other things like, why am I so fatigued, and a mental fog in that, and there's some indication that it might affect the function of the mitochondria in some of these cells. So yeah, it really does. There is a correlation. It really directly will affect what happens in the brain, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, fascinating.
So
That's
I guess it's like how HRT can really help kind of keep. And when I say HRT, hormonal replacement therapy.
Hormone replacement therapy. Yeah.
So that
I
means
think so. There's always been a controversy on HRT, whether what's the harm and the benefit of it, and can it cause stroke and heart attacks and cause you to get blood clots. That's always been questionable. But there are very clear benefits of HRT, I think, with all of these lifestyle things that we talked about, not just the symptoms, but also your bone health. And there's really clear benefits. Where, in my view, the potential hazards are questionable. So I'm personally a big fan of HRT for women. I'm also a fan, and I'm not. This is not an opinion that's popular, but I'm also a fan of testosterone for women. Very low doses.
I've heard of that too. I've heard of some doctors.
How come? Tell me why.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. There is, so this is a science that's not very well known in the industry of health, and physicians really don't really learn about this. I didn't learn about this in med school, but we do that. It's important to know that women do need a level of testosterone, right? Yeah. And that testosterone really have a lot of beneficial effects. And nobody really researches and looks into, well, what is deficiency of testosterone in women? We don't have any norms. So this is very poorly understood. But we do know that women that go on doses of testosterone that are fractions of what men need, and we're talking about really small amounts, really gain a lot of benefit from that. Now, long-term benefits on bone health and all that are implicated, but not as well studied as your hormone replacement with estrogen.
Right.
But it does it does improve your mood. It does improve your energy. People can do more. When they go to gym, their muscles will tone up a little bit. They look better. They feel better. It really is a game changer for a lot of women. It's a gem. It's a secret that's well kept.
Interesting.
Wow.
So I feel like a lot of doctors, and I think this is where you and I can definitely agree that telehealth expands access. I think that there have been telehealths that have come up that are willing to treat people with HRT, because there's a lot of doctors that aren't willing to treat perimenopause. They're like, no, you need to be getting there. You need to be missing periods. And it's a shame. I think it's a shame because then I meet other doctors who are like, that's ridiculous. Why would you suffer when you don't have to,
Yeah. No, I mean, I can share with you, my own wife went on the TRT and testosterone, and she's not menopausal, but for her, it was a life changer. It was such an amazing experience. Yeah, and then she had more libido, so then I got in trouble. It really improves your life. It improves that fatigue. It improves that midlife fatigue and that perimenopausal symptoms, and improves your sex life, and it really improves everything. And she will never go off of it. I can tell you that. Yeah. And there are a lot of testimonials from women that go on it that just find this to be a miracle. Again, it's like the GLP1s that weren't well known. I think the trend for TRT is increasing too, and I think we're going to learn more and more about it. And it's going to become a science.
Yeah, fascinating. I think we have some of our male friends that have come on the show and lost lots of weight on GLP-1s that have started testosterone, and they've been like, it's a game changer. It's huge for us. And so I've never thought about it, but what I was going to ask you is in terms of administration. So they have to do a big old shot right in the muscle. Would a woman have to do that too, or is it going to be the same thing like with cream?
No, you can actually do subcutaneous like you do with the GLP-1s. Yeah, it can actually be a shot, but the dosing is different and it's more frequent than the intramuscular.
Frequent, How
3
often?
times a week, for instance.
3 times a week.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a protocol to administer it 3 times a week, as opposed to 1 or 2 times a week on intramuscular.
Man, I'm literally putting this on my list to talk to my doctor about. My husband will be thrilled.
And there's pellets too, right? So you can put pellets like in the buttocks. They put pellets, and that lasts for months.
Interesting.
Right.
No way.
There is that. There is pellets. Disadvantage of pellets. Now, let me tell you, people think differently of these things. So the one good thing is you only put it once, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, you're good, and they check your levels in that. Some people find out that the pellets, the levels are a little bit erratic. And some people's experience, some physicians' experience is that no, it's a little bit actually stable, more stable than the intramuscular. I find that the subcutaneous injection several times a week gives you more stability. But the pellets is a great alternative for people that don't like to get stuck. You just do it once, and that's good for several months.
Yeah, we're good with getting stuck. We stick ourselves every week. I used to be a daily sticker when I first started GLP-1s. I'm
Right?
like, I got this. Come on. People are
old school.
chickens. That's so interesting. Go ahead, Kat. Sorry about aging.
Oh, about aging. Well, we kind of really all covered this, like things that we can do to help prevent aging in our brains, right? The exercise, the nutrition, for both men and women. How about this? Is there anything that would surprise us? Any sort of foods that would be surprisingly beneficial? Any sort of activity? Well, we kind of touched on that, but yeah.
We touched on the activity a little bit.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the menopausal brain and what foods can be surprising for that, right?
Yeah.
So omega-3 fatty acids, the EPA and the DHA, where do you get omega-3 fatty acids? Where you get it from fish oil, you get it from fish, right? Omega-3 fatty acids, you get it from your fish, your salmon, halibut, all of that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Flaxseed, get a flaxseed and chia seeds from your Publix or wherever that has it. You have these organic ones. Throw it on your salad. Throw it on your food. Those are very, very healthy. And those omega-3 fatty acids are nutrition for the menopausal brain. They reduce the inflammation. We talked about the inflammation, and also help support the cell membrane. So this is part of your essential fatty acids. Eventually, right? Your polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats, as opposed to the trans fats that you want to avoid. Phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens, again, you find them in soy, flaxseed, and legumes. Mimic estrogen activity. So there's some thought process that may be good for menopausal brain, right? So soy, flax seeds, and legumes that have these things. Always in these lists are always vitamin Bs, particularly vitamin B12 and folate, because these are coenzymes. They're enzymes. They're coenzymes for the vitamins are coenzymes for synthesis of the neurotransmitters, which are proteins. And so there's some indication that your vitamin B12, and as we get older, we do get prone to deficiency of B12. So it's important to get tested for it, because as much as you supply it orally, if you truly are deficient in B12, you really would need injections and other means to supply it for a lot of different reasons. And antioxidants are, as we all know, can reduce the oxidative stress, and also is good for the perimenopausal brain. Those are the ones that really come out of all the food groups in that.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, like we were talking about testosterone and possibly small doses for women. Does adding testosterone do something to the brain? Like, what's the benefits for that?
Not really well known, except that you get some of the benefits that you get from HRT. It reduces your fatigue. You're more alert. You wake up the next day, and with a lot of these things that we do, like there's peptides and all these kind of things, and all the thought process is going to help you down the road. But with TRT, you feel the benefit immediately, like the next day or the next couple of days. You started, you feel it, and you really feel. You wake up, it's like a whole new day. Like you feel like you don't have that fatigue. You feel alert. You feel good. Mood changes. I mean, you feel like you're on top of the world, temporarily. And then long term, you really start to feel the benefit of it health-wise. You start to feel your fat metabolism will increase. Actually, we didn't talk about that. Your fat metabolism will increase, and you link that with good diet and good exercise.
Yeah.
You start to get toned, and the more you increase your muscle, so the more muscle mass that you have, the more you're going to break down the fat. You know that. You know that's the.
I did not know that until recently. No.
Yeah.
Muscle burns fat. I've always
muscle burns fat because muscle will increase your metabolism. And you think about it, each muscle cell, each fiber has a lot of mitochondria in it, and those are the powerhouses, right? Now you start to exercise, you start to activate the powerhouses, you start to increase, actually at the cellular level, you start to increase the mitochondria in these cells. And now you're adding the testosterone to really like boost up the system. And at rest, when you have muscle mass, at rest, you actually start to break down fat because of the metabolism so high.
That's so great. My husband takes testosterone because he had a pituitary tumor a couple years ago. And he can always tell when he needs to be dosed or when he needs his shot. His memory, his energy, his lethargic, so much. Yeah.
I would love to talk about like what's going on in the brain when it comes to regain and like the set weight with obesity. We've had doctors come on and talk about kind of the set weight theory and that it is a theory. It's not necessarily proven, but that kind of like what's going on there. So for example, like Kat and I both had regain, and it was right about the time for perimenopause onset for us, if you will. But like now that I'm aware of it, like I've increased my protein, but here's the thing. I haven't done anything different. I'm not eating bad foods or, quote, bad foods, right? Or eating more foods or exercising less. Like if anything, I just feel like I've been sort of eating out more, but I'm still not eating like tons of like the normal assumption someone makes when you gain weight is you're overeating, right? I'm not, but my body started to regain. And again, like I've been doing strength training with Kat. Quick plug for strength training with Kat on the YouTube channel. You go to the podcast on the YouTube. And we do exercises together, and we do things like exercises for like if you're a beginner or if you can't like get on the floor and like just all different things, because there's lots of things that you can do and she knows about them and I don't, so I think that's really cool. Like if you're not a big gym goer, which I'm not, but you can do all these things at home. But I think that there's something I want to talk about like around that set weight and what's going on in the brain with that, because I've heard some people on social media talk about it and I don't know what's true and what's not. And you're such a good person to ask this question for. So can you talk a little bit about like when you've lost a good bit of weight on or not on GLP, just lost weight, why the body's trying to regain or what's going on with that in the brain so that we can understand it a little bit?
Well, I mean, the one component of this is that you touched on is the perimenopausal and menopausal phase. I mean, you have to think of that as sort of a bump with, you have to kind of, if you trend your weight loss and you trend your homeostasis weight, let's call it that, and you're going to get that little bump with or without the GLP-1s. You're going to get that challenge that your body has to reset and rethink. And that's just the nature of it. So could that have played a role? Your hormones played a role potentially. I think we also, when you kind of change your dietary habits and all that lifestyle and all that, you start to also, there's a complacency that happens too. And sometimes you're not even thinking about it and you're not even thinking what's happening. But you still are eating not more, but maybe things that, you want to cheat a little bit on your usual diet and this and that. So those may be parts of it. It's very difficult to know. I don't like the idea of set weight or homeostasis. Like what is like, I'm just my set weight is always this, because I do believe that with the GLP-1s, you have an opportunity to change that setting. You just have to grab the opportunity with good diet and good exercise and really change who you are and how you approach food.
Yeah. And I think like even just to how you approach your life, like it's, and a lot of that has to do, and this is still something I'm learning, but thinking I've been like this for so many years, is making time to do these things. Like not having time. Nobody has time, right? Making time. Like I block out my calendar to exercise with Kat. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that is a big shift for me because like I'm a mom of a special needs family. Like I've got a bunch of jobs and, and all these different things. So like I don't have time. Time does not exist. I have to make it. And I think that's part of this. We don't love to talk about it in the beginning because in the beginning, you're just kind of dropping pounds and it's great and all the things. But then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, but like, what does this look like going forward? Like if you're planning on staying on what is the next step? Like to avoid stroke, right? To avoid regain, to avoid all those things. And I think there is a piece of this, I mean, I really do like the movement from a muscle. Like I do think that strength training piece has been such a big deal. Like I lost 4 pounds this month and I've been gaining steadily. And it wasn't until I was like, all right, like I want to make sure, like also that you said, like I'm paying attention to what I'm eating, right? Like not just being like, I'm on the go, I'm this, I'm that. Because it's not like I've been going to fast food. It's not like I've been sitting down and doing habitual things. But like, I think that just in general, like the choices, that's what I was saying. Is I feel like the nutritional choices have not been intentional. And I don't think I've been eating enough protein and things like that. And as soon as I changed those things, the weight started to come off again. So I think there's going to be like this fluctuation piece that we all have to talk about. I mean, I don't love it, guys. I don't love talking about diet and exercise, like, but ultimately it is a part of this. It is a part of it. Like, and so I think like, it's just something that even as a podcast, we've only just started to really talk more about. Like Kat's always talked about it, but like, I think I just didn't even want to. I was like, I'm scared of that. I'm scared of that because diet and exercise and sort of like the diet culture, like in America, right? Like kind of broke me mentally. You know what I mean? But there's just a new way of going about it. And I love the idea of being able to move at home and use resistance bands and a kettlebell and move with your friend. And there's just a lot of, I think, a different way to go about it and think about it for this new life, this healthier life, I did want to ask you too, one of the experiences that I had early, and I've had many people say this, is that with GLP-1 medications that I started on Saxenda, but I saw this as a huge difference when I was on Ozempic. When I was on Ozempic, I've always had obsessive anxiety. I do not see this controlled as well on Mounjaro with a double agonist, but something specifically about Ozempic is I swear it just turned off in the same way that food noise turned off. Like it's almost like it was the same thing. I used to just like worry and about things that were completely out of my control or so far into the future. And I remember like talking to my friends about it. Like I would hold it all in because I knew I was crazy. And I would like talk to my girlfriends about it. And I could see like the pain on their face of how ridiculous these worries were that I was telling them about. Like but they wouldn't tell me because they love me, right? They're my safe people. But when it was amazing how that turned off for me. Or even now, even on the double agonist, like being able to like, I can see when I'm doing that and make adjustments, right? But when I was on Ozempic, it just turned off like a switch in the same way that the food noise did. And I've had lots of people say that. I don't know. It's something about sort of the panic and anxiety thing. Have you heard anybody else report that, or have you read anything about that?
No, actually I have. And it may potentially be the effect of serotonin, but we do know that the GLP-1s act on the hypothalamus, right? We talked about that earlier.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stress response is one of those things. The triggers for binge eating, the triggers for smoking, there's anxiety under that.
Yeah.
And so it's really all linked to the same thought process. So there is, again, this is a new world that we're discovering.
Yeah.
And it's good, and it gives you a chance to kind of just sit back and really observe what is really going on with this, right? And I think, part of our challenge with food is we have to make a good relationship with food. We have to make friends with food, right?
Yep.
And I think one of the things that I would love to see as part of our anyone who goes on the GLP-1 diet is, and again, to me, at the beginning of this journey, I didn't understand it very well, but I understand it much better now, is mindful exercise and being mindful when you're eating.
Yes.
Right?
So true.
it's, we're used to the culture of on the go. The TV's on, you're just popping the popcorn. You're not even paying attention to the enjoyment of the food. You're really, really enjoying it. It just becomes a circuit.
Yeah.
But for a second, just kind of when you put the food in your mouth, first feel it, then taste it, then chew it slowly and feel the juice that comes down, and taste it a little bit more. And as you're swallowing it, it's like there's different things. There's your visual experience, your tactile experience, the touch of the food, plus the taste of the food. There's different senses that you can use to enjoy that experience. What ends up happening is now you eat slowly, deliberately, enjoy the food. And now it's less volumes of food, but really, you really start to really enjoy it and experience it. Food becomes an experience that you don't forget. So I think we have to really understand, as we're given this amazing tool, or the GLP-1s, how do we maximize our use of it? And these are all the things that we think about.
Yeah, I think so. And in the beginning, it is very much like, not everybody had this. Like, Kat started on Mounjaro. I've been on all of them because of the shortage and stupid ass insurance. But I definitely had a lot of food aversion. Like, I didn't want to eat anything. And there definitely were days where I ate maybe 500 calories, and I wasn't a big body. So that was stupid, but I learned on this show. I'm so thankful for the doctors that have come on our show, especially when we were very small, and like, I've learned like about this, and that's why I'm trying, others have learned with us, which is fantastic. But it really wasn't until I got on the double agonist that I could eat more, and then I lost more. And then like sort of putting that together, like, oh wait, you have to eat to lose weight. Like, I'm telling you, diet culture messed us up bad, like it did. It was like, 1,000 calories a day. You exercise 2 hours a day for 6 days a week. And if you are still fat, then you are fat and lazy and worthless and useless. Like that was yet the obesity rate continued to climb. So clearly they did not figure it out, But again, like the combination of these things, and I think that's such a good way to think about it, finding a way to enjoy food. That is something I struggle with because I'm an efficient eater. Like I don't know how to describe it. I'm rarely eating for pleasure or joy or anything like that. So now what I'm trying to do is, like you said, like kind of slow down and take a step back and find things that I do enjoy and not wolf them down. Because to me, I'm just like, it's like, my brain is like, this is just how we feel our body. We got to go live our life now. You know what I mean? Like, just
exactly.
get it in, but I think the slowing down, the mindful thing is something I've been working on, especially since I had my lap band removed. When I had my lap band removed, all of a sudden my body was like, we can eat all the things, but I'm on a GLP-1. So I stop, right? Like I'll be like 6 bites in and my body's like, and I'm like, no, that's like 200 calories. We got to eat some more food. Like I have to, it's like a constant conversation with your body, to do that. But I think, it's such a journey. And that's, we had this hashtag in the beginning. It was hashtag Mounjaro journey when we were first like sharing on social media and stuff a couple years ago. But like, it really is like, we thought it was a weight loss journey, right? Like that's what we did, right? We did shot day videos and weigh-in day videos. And we were just like, oh, let's lose all the weight. And then, for what? Because we're probably just going to gain all back again. That's usually how it works, right? But then during this, we had doctors come forward. We started the podcast, all these things. And we just started to learn like, this is living life with a chronic disease, right? That this is, getting to, whether it's you're on a maintenance for, maybe you try to go off the medicine, maybe you don't, but like understanding your options and understanding like how it could work and all of that, I think is really important because right now, according to science, right, it is a chronic disease, right? And so it's likely to reoccur. So we have to do what we can do, whether that's on the medicine or off the medicine or using other kinds of, maybe we don't use GLP-1s, maybe we're on Mobutrin or maybe we're on nothing. I don't know. Like it's different for everybody. I think especially like Kat and I always struggling with obesity versus my mom who didn't struggle with obesity until she was she's like 65, she just kind of had like some weight issues. So it didn't even happen then. Could she come off of it if she wanted to? Maybe so. But my mom has seen tremendous health benefits outside, like just like we're talking about this being a new science, outside of this, like with inflammation, with her like mentally and with her arthritis, like all these different things, her blood pressure, she's come down on her blood pressure medicine. And it's not because she was like like class 3 obesity. Like she really wasn't. She was like just borderline obesity if we're looking at the BMI chart. So I think it's just so interesting to keep having these conversations. And if we're going to talk about freezing our bodies and seeing if that's a thing, I'm up for it. Like I think it's important for us to talk about it and understand it too, so that we can ask for what we need. That's because we have come across that a lot where like especially our GPs, they don't know. Right. And I think that if we can know and be like, this is what we need, and be able to advocate for what we need, not like this is the drug I need, right? But like, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I've learned. And I want to know more about this and ask questions. I think that we need to be that way because this is just, like you said, it's a new science and we're constantly learning. So thank you so much for coming on our show. I would love for you to tell us where people can find you and learn more about you. And we will put all that information in our show notes as well.
Sure. So we talked about the telehealth company. I'm the CEO of Telespecialist. So tstelemed.com is our core company. We do telemedicine across the United States, in 45 states, teleneurology, telepsychiatry, and also we do some of the treatments for GLP1s and whatnot. So we're here.
Fantastic. I love that. Oh, I just realized we had a question from one of our community members. Could we close out with that? Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
Okay, this is from D, our listener. She's still a little bit confused about the type of sleep study that she had. She mentioned that undergoing a neuro sleep study, but she was told with the results, they couldn't determine if she had sleep apnea. Could you explain the key difference between a neuro sleep study and a pulmonary sleep study? Specifically, what aspects of sleep does each type of study focus on? Given that,
Okay, so, and I'm not sure exactly what she means by a neural sleep study, but there's different ways of doing a sleep study, right? So there is a way where they will send you a kit to your home that you can do it at home. And so basically the focus of that is, your saturation of oxygen, and see how many times you stop breathing, basically, when you have your apneic episodes, right? When we talk about apneic episodes, there's two kinds of apnea. There is obstructive sleep apnea, which is breathing. You just snore and you obstruct the airways. Then there's central apnea, which is your brain gets used to you doing that so much that your brain will actually tell your body to stop breathing. So it's not really, it doesn't come from here. So you can lose the weight.
Never knew that.
When you lose the weight, the sleep apnea stops, but then you stop central apnea because your brain has learned that. So the two ways of doing this would be, first, the very crude way is to send that machine at home that you can just say, hey, how many times did I stop breathing? And when it's significant enough, then you go in, and that's a real good way to do a sleep study. And that's probably what is meant by that. When you go into the sleep center, so they hook you up with all things, but one of those hookups is your EEG, their brainwave study too, at the same time that they're studying your saturations and that. And they truly then they'll give you the whole story and how many times you stop breathing, what's your apnea score, and all of that stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's fascinating.
So used to having sleep
but
apnea.
I had sleep apnea and then I lost 110 pounds. So I stopped using it and now I'm having a hard time sleeping again. And I know I got the peri going on, but like maybe I should get another sleep study.
Yes. Central apnea. So if your body has seen that sleep apnea for a long time, brain gets used to it, and you may not snore, but you may, and again, it's happening when you're sleeping. So you wake up in the morning, you don't know why you're waking up, but again, it disrupts your sleep cycles. You need at least, sleep cycle of 90 minutes of each sleep cycle. And it's disrupted, you don't get adequate sleep, and it's not healthy.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
Everybody go get another sleep study. Don't just quit wearing like your machine like I did. Thank you so much, Dr. Monsoon. I appreciate you so much.
Absolutely.
We learned so much on this episode. I'm excited. All right.
Great.
So much.
Thank you. And we'll, if there are any socials or anything that you want to plug, like if you're on LinkedIn or if you have any kind of socials that you guys are on outside of the business or for yourself, feel free to send those to me and I will put them in so people can follow you. Okay.
Sure. Sounds good.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Mazu.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
It was nice meeting you.
Right.
Same here. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great night.
Oh my gosh, that was so good.
It was.
Right? I love it. Well, we will see you next year, friends. I mean, not next year, next week, friends. It's been a long day. I've been working sun up to sundown. Thank you so much for coming. And I hope that you learned some good stuff about the brain. I'm just going to call this GLP-1 in the brain because that's what we talked about. You know what I mean? Like ultimately, right?
We've got GLP-1 on the brain anyway. So yeah.
GLP-1.
And I think we just scratched the surface that this could be a two-parter at some point later down the road.
We forgot to ask about your condition. How I brought you on specifically for that, and I forgot.
It is totally fine. That's why we'll need to do a part 2 at some point.
All right. We'll have to get another neurologist, or I don't know. I've been wanting to have this. You guys know I've been talking about one ever. So I was so excited to meet him. He was absolutely fantastic. He was such a good patient. Yes. Well, we will see you next week. And until then, hasta la pasta. And we'll talk to you soon.
Want the fastest working GLP-1? For half the price, Ro now offers FDA-approved weight loss injections cheaper. With results you can see faster. Lose 15% of your weight with the formula from Eli Lilly that hits not one, but 2 hormones to curb hunger and nausea. Weight loss faster. Confidence higher. Price cheaper. See if you qualify at ro.co/TV.
Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus SideZ Podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus SideZ Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus SideZ Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.